Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. I'm Simon Short. Joining me this week is Ben Parker. Ben, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. Hello to the audience, as always. And Simon, it is a pleasure. We are loaded. We have so much to talk about. We're going to pack it to one little itty bitty episode, but I can't wait, man.
Ben's face just lit up because we've been on Zoom for about 90 minutes doing a bunch of other stuff for box score and the network but just before I hit record, I took my first sip of coffee since 3 p.m. and he chuckled at that. And then I started talking at 2x speed immediately as soon as it hit my lips. And here we are, man. It is draft season. We are drinking coffee at 11 p.m. Do not judge. Ben Austin and I might have, and Peyton might have been in a Slack at like 12:30 a.m. the other night talking about third round receivers. I may have had a coffee at that point in the night too, but alas, we are here. So War Room series. But before we start that, Ben, I do have a topic I'm springing on you. I didn't even prep you for this one,
Uh,
and if it feels necessary, it's almost like we're almost. I'm finding out if we're posting a retraction, right? It's a mea culpa, if you will,
oh, no.
because the scuttlebutt, not to be confused with Aquafina in the live action Little Mermaid movie.
Right.
The scuttlebutt since, I don't know, midweek last week, it's March 26th as we record this, literally starting the 19th, 20th last week. I start hearing on pods and seeing on mocks that the Cleveland Browns are kind of moving into pole position to draft Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado. And then all this reporting comes out and the insiders get involved, and I mean the real insider, not Schefter and Rappaport, like Todd McShay, Daniel Jeremiah, and we're looking back at those radio clips of Deion Sanders saying he's gonna, he has 4 or 5 teams he's not gonna let Shadur go to. We do a War Room Series Colorado edition where we think Deion would let Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders go. We go through that whole thing. The Browns would be a perfect spot, but there's no way. Like if you're a Hall of Fame NFL player and your son is a quarterback, there's no. If you had a team you weren't going to send your son to, it was the Cleveland Browns. But now it's like, you know what? We've been looking at the mocks, and if he doesn't go to the Browns, he could go. He could fall out of the top 10, and that obviously hurts financially. It hurts from a rep standpoint, not being a top three pick, whatever. So now it's like, okay, there were teams that were out, right? There were teams that like do not fly zone, do not draft Shadur. And I think it was Todd McShay specifically said he knew of at least one or two teams that were on that no draft list because they were drafting too late in the first round specific. Like they weren't a top five, whatever. And he didn't even say what number it was, but they were just drafting too late. So I don't know. Like, let me take my Steelers, for example. Was Dion specifically like, hey, don't draft Shedeur at 21 because we don't want him to be Kenny Pickett, right? He's going in the top five. Now, if you trade into the top five, come talk to us. Was it the Saints at 9? He didn't want to drop out of the top five. Was it the Colts at 14? I don't know. Pick your team, pick wherever you think that Mendoza line is. Or do you think it's more they got to this point in the process and they're like, wow, if it's not the Browns, we don't know where he's getting drafted. So hearing this, I don't know if you kind of saw this, followed this through the weekend or anything, but hearing this and seeing Shadeur's back in these mocks at 2 to the Browns right after Cam Ward at 1 to the Titans. So react to that. What do you think? Shadur, Dion, the Browns, the whole thing.
I think there's a percentage pie chart that we should probably put together, but I may not even do that. So I do think there's a lot of vectors going on in here. I've personally, just on my little personal pulpit note, I've personally always felt these two quarterbacks were going to go in the top three picks.
Mhm.
Whether or not that was going to be Browns, Giants, Titans, or somebody else trading up, I just always believed that. And I hadn't yet seen or heard anything that moved me off of it. Now, the next part of that to me was how many teams even need quarterbacks? Because you and I have talked about for several
Yep.
drafts now, one of the biggest indicators of what NFL teams actually think about the quarterbacks available in the draft is how many teams enter the draft needing a quarterback. And it's gotten to be a really small number. It's down to like two or three, depending on how you want to interpret things.
Hmm.
So that leads me to the next thing, which you already mentioned, and that is Deion Sanders, Daddy Sanders, looking up and down the lineup and going, well, there's not a whole lot of teams that are still in this. So either they're out on Shedeur, they don't believe him in any way, or they think he's going so high that they have no shot at him, so they need to have another plan already in place. And I do think, given that scenario, which I think is a legit one, I think there are some teams out on Shedeur completely, and I think there's other teams who just believe he's going so high they don't have a shot at him. So they got another plan in place. Given that scenario, Daddy Deion Sanders, who I love, by the way, not criticizing, I love, but I think he probably behind the scenes looked at that and went, well, maybe I wasn't in favor of Cleveland before, but Shadeur's got to go somewhere. It looks like he's not going to go number one, more than likely, based on everything we're hearing. So maybe I am okay with him going to Cleveland if ever, in fact, he wasn't. So that's kind of where I'm at on a lot of that right there.
Yeah, it was. And I was in the same boat with you for a long time. Like, rank Shedeur where you will, but he has translatable NFL skills that a lot of these coaches and teams that need a quarterback, like, hey, can you stand tall in
Right.
the pocket and be accurate? Like, just give me that. I want the bare minimum. And he can do those things extremely well. So like Stefanski, that's great. Dayball, like would love that. But you mentioned like the moves that some of these teams have made. What does that indicate to us? The Giants signing Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson makes you think, yeah, they know something, right?
That's what I
I
thought.
don't know if you
Yes.
do
Yeah.
both of now listen to like combined the only guarantees for those two guys, it's like 1 year, 14 million, which is like
Mhm.
would be the highest paid backup in the league, but like it would be justifiable backup court. I mean, that's the Daniel Jones contract, I think, basically.
I think so. Yeah.
So you could still do that if you want, but it also does kind of screen like, yeah, we kind of know something's going to happen. And it was 2 weeks ago. I just went back through our DMs here, and it was the 11th. So right before we recorded our last War Room series, and that was where I sent you a mock that I did with Shedeur going 9 to the Saints. And
Hmm.
really, in these last 2 weeks, that's been the only real time I'm like I've bought into the Shedeur falling. Because I was like, okay,
Yeah.
whether 2 or 3 like Giants makes sense. Um, and you could talk yourself into it, and this is the time of year where we do this, right? Where we talk ourselves into guys that haven't been believed to be first round picks, and vice versa. And then we get to the draft, and the thing we expected happens. So if that is just Shedeur is a top three pick, and it happens with Cleveland or it happens with New York or they do a pick swap, whatever, that does seem, at least right now, just reading the tea leaves and what people are saying, that does seem like the most likely scenario coming off of Cam Ward. It really feels like he's been pushed into pole position really in the last several weeks as
Yeah.
well. If you are watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Please like this video. We will talk to you guys soon. Have fun and be safe out there.